melt is when I'm ocean waves.
Today on Nova Legends podcast, I have my favorite local sports photographer, Cindy Bezelik. She's better known as Cindy B Shoots. Does a lot of great photography for Prince William County sports, but also for Navy lacrosse. Cindy is a former elite gymnast, also a diver, and before she embraced photography. And she's going to James Madison in the fall with my daughter, my middle child, and she's going to study, I believe, sports management. And we'll get into all that in a minute.
Yes.
Cindy, did I get most of that correct?
Yeah, it looks great. Yeah, thank you so much for having me today. I'm super excited. Of
Oh, of course. Well, thanks for doing this.
course.
Well, first, I wanted to talk about competing as a gymnast.
Mhm.
So my daughters both did gymnastics, and my middle child, the one going to Madison, Lily, she competed for a long time in it. It was a lot of pressure, and I didn't enjoy watching her because there was so much pressure. Tell us about your journey in gymnastics.
It's very long, so bear with me. But I started gymnastics when I was 5 years old because the co-owner of my gym, which was Apollo Gymnastics down in Woodbridge, she lived across the street from me. So I would like tumble in the grass with my neighbors, and then they told me that I should just try gymnastics class. So I did. And then I just kind of stuck with it. And then I progressed very quickly. I went from the recreational level to level three, from level three, skipped level four to level five. And then I joined the talent opportunity program, or also known as TOPS, at my gym, which put me through a series of strength and flexibility training, as well as certain types of routines. And through that testing, I was able to qualify through the state level and then to the national level,
Wow.
which allowed me to go to the U.S. Women's Olympic Training Center at the Crowley Ranch, which I think it changed now due to the allegations and stuff, unfortunately. But so yeah, I got to go there. I qualified to the TOPS A camp. They had an A and a B camp, and I spent a week out getting coached by the Olympic staff when I was 8 years old. And then after that, I skipped to level eight. So I went from five to eight. And then I went all the way up to level 10. I homeschooled for majority of middle school. So I left in the middle of fifth grade and then came back in eighth grade, which was a huge adjustment for me because those are like some of the most critical periods of development, especially socially. So going between like my school friends and having to have a whole different kind of like identity and like losing touch with them, as well as jumping back into middle school, was super tough. But as soon as I really hit puberty, gymnastics became a lot harder on my body. I got injured a lot more. And my coach, I remember he used to call it the terrible teens, because when a lot of girls would hit puberty, they kind of realized that like some of the things that they'd say to you, or like you've had more autonomy and control over what things you really wanted to do. Because I grew up always being like a yes man and trying to really please my coaches, because I spent more time with my coaches than my own family. And like pleasing them and doing good in their eyes meant the world to me for the longest time until I really grew up. And it took to me having this really bad injury with my hands. So a lot of gymnasts, I'm sure you know, like they call them rips when your skin blisters up where the calluses are and they rip off from swinging on the bar. And so it's a raw piece of skin rubbing up against like a wooden bar, and it's so painful. Um, One time before I quit, I was on bars for about like 3 hours, and my coach was like, "You're gonna stay here. I don't care if you're sick, throwing up, have a migraine. I don't care if you have any injuries. Like you're gonna finish the assignment." And so it was a little petty of me, but I was like, "Okay, I'll finish it." But I had these like quarter-sized pieces of skin ripped off. This happened on both hands. It was here and here, three rips right here, and then two on each finger. And it happened on both my hands. And so I couldn't end up finishing because I could barely like move my hands. And so I was like, "Hey, look, like this is what I was willing to do to please you." And he was like, "Are you stupid? Like, why would you even do that?" Like, and kind of turned it on me. And then I ended up breaking my finger. And then I saw it as a way out. And I was like, "I don't want to do this anymore. I can't like no matter how far I was or how good I may be to other people, like I simply knew that I wasn't happy in gymnastics, which was also really hard to come to because I have a lot of achievements and things that like I was a really big example for the younger girls in my gym. Like there's a banner with my name in it still and everything. And knowing that I was disappointing more than just myself, but potentially even like my parents, my coaches, my teammates, the younger girls at the gym was super hard, but it was the best decision that I've ever made in my life.
So, do you think your challenges with gymnastics is a matter of the gym that you belong to and the folks out there, or do you think it's a more of a symptom of gymnastics generally for young girls or for girls?
I definitely think it's gymnastics as a whole. There's definitely a toxic way of training, and there's lots of manipulation that's usually involved with the way that they get like young girls to do things. And I even wrote about like a research paper in school, and it was about the history and the commonality between like eating disorders, mental disorders between young girls through women dominated sports, but gymnastics being one of the most prominent. And when I went to the Olympic Training Center, it sounds lots of fun, but I cried the whole time. I hated it once I saw a glimpse into how true like elite gymnastics were to be. Because if I were to follow through with developmental camp, when I was homeschooled, which meant I would have to fly out to Texas every month, I could not put myself through that. And some of these girls, like, they were willing to sacrifice anything just to have the dreams of going to the Olympics. But I was very sure after that point that that's not where I wanted to go at all, just because I didn't want to be miserable for the rest of my life.
Yeah. So you eventually tried diving.
Mm-hmm.
And diving is another sport with a lot of pressure. It's one of those sports like gymnastics. You're only graded when you mess up. If you,
Mm-hmm.
looking for your, I guess the splash is too big. It's like if you don't, in gymnastics, if you don't land perfectly, that's a deduction. Diving's more of the same. Did you find kind of the same misery in diving, or was it better? And was it different?
I'd say because I only did diving at the high school level. So because after I quit gymnastics, I wanted nothing to do with sports just because I mean I needed a break mentally and physically. But I tried to kind of fill that void that I had with gymnastics with diving because upon quitting gymnastics too, like I also struggled with my identity for a long time and the label being an athlete. And I really wanted to experience something like that again before choosing to let that part of my life go. But it was super fun. And since it was high school, it wasn't really taxing at all. I mean, I was like decent for a high schooler, but then we'd go to the state championships and there's lots of clubs up in Fairfax. And they would just crush us every time. But it was still fun to say that I got to go that far in a sport that I didn't really have experience in, but it definitely translated well with gymnastics, which I feel like made me able to be a better diver than some people who have no experience.
Yeah. Oh, what high school do you go to, Sydney?
I go to Patriot High
Okay,
School.
Patriot. Oh, my buddy
Yeah.
Sherman, Coach Sherman's there.
Oh yeah,
I'm
yeah.
sure you've met him once or twice.
Of course. Yeah.
So, okay, well, so then after diving, you experimented with diving, and it was fun. It wasn't as serious as gymnastics. How did you come to photography?
So when I was younger, I would go to these sleepaway camps, and one of them was called Woodward in Pennsylvania. And so I went 1 year for gymnastics for a week, and this one little girl, they had a photography program there, and she was like, "Oh, well, you want to do like a little photo shoot because they have like a portfolio they have to do by the end of the week and everything." And I went with her. It was so cool, and I've always been intrigued by like the photos I'd get taken of me at gymnastics meets. And so the year after, I wanted to go for gymnastics and photography, but that's the year I actually ended up quitting. So I only went for photography because I just needed something else to like kind of fill in the time gap that I had. And for some reason that year, I just like my sister had a camera and I watched some YouTube videos on photography and I just decided like, hey, like let's pick it up. And then um, while I was a diver, I was still into photography. I joined like the photo club at my high school. And then last year, I started shooting at the homecoming game, and then basketball took off, which I definitely owe a lot of like my success to, and I'm very appreciative that I could like document the success of the team. And then that's where my business like really took off. I do like grad photos and minimal like portrait work because that's what I first started off doing. Because then I went to that summer camp. They did some workshops and everything. We got to experiment with like the studio. It was so awesome. Um, so that's where I get my money from. But a lot of my sports work is actually voluntary. And yeah, I just kind of would reach out to people and be like, hey, like I'm a high school senior looking to get some experience. Like, here's some of my work. Because honestly, if you just reach out, like the worst people can say is no. And I've gotten a lot of opportunities that way. So it's been super cool.
So do you think the work ethic that you had to build doing gymnastics in a hot gym for 4 hours a day or whatever it was, has it helped you in your approach to photography? This is something that you probably enjoy. Has your work ethic carried over and contributed to your success in photography?
I definitely agree. I feel like the hardships that gymnastics put me through and like the skills that I also still learned that were valuable, like time management and meeting certain deadlines, working fast and under pressure, like that all corresponds still within the art of photography, especially sports photography, because they want the photos like there and now. So I have to be really fast, but it's also really cool because I still always will have a love for sports. And so watching the game and enjoying it as well as capturing those photos is just, it makes it such a great experience as a whole.
Mm. Do you miss being the athlete, the subject of the photos? Or are you very comfortable being on the photographer side of that transaction?
Um, if you were to ask me this question probably last year, I'd probably say it would. But now, since I've found this new passion and kind of gone over the block of, oh, like, am I ever going to be as good or talented at something ever again? Like, honestly, I don't really, because my body has changed a lot and I don't even think that I could do anything like that anymore. Like, trying to imagine diving even right now, I'm just like, it's too much for me. But honestly, it's nice to be able to sympathize with those athletes that I do get to photograph because I know how they feel a lot of the time. You know, like I know how good it feels to win the championship, or I know how bad it must be to like lose or be like the reason why your team lost sometimes. Like it's just good knowing that I could really understand those emotions and put that into my photography too.
Yeah. Are you competitive with other photographers like you were in gymnastics? Because I mean, there's a lot of it's weird. There's a lot of great
Yeah.
photographers in Prince William County, and I mean, and you, obviously you want to be the best, and to me, you are the best. But do you feel the same kind of level of competition you felt as a gymnast?
Not necessarily competition. It's more so of me like wanting to build business connections because like you never know what can come up for some of the people that I stand along with on the sidelines. Like just because they might be just starting out now doesn't mean that maybe in a few years they could be in a position that I want to be just because maybe I didn't work hard enough or just because they knew the right person, you know? So I always try and keep that in the back of my pocket and to try and stay humble. Like just because was able to make a name for myself doesn't mean that I'm like necessarily like above anybody, you know, and I'm still willing to help people learn because photography has changed my life too. And I hope that I can do that for other people.
Yeah. So, and as a photography changed, I mean, I know it's changed over the years, but has the skill set changed? So, I've always liked taking pictures, and nowhere near as good as you, but I've taken pictures over the years, even when I was in college, when students didn't have cameras because we had to get them developed at like Photomat or these stores you would
Mm-hmm.
go, or even a drugstore, and it'd come back in a week. So no one had time for that. But I did. I had a camera in college, and I saw photos that I took, and not many people did that. It was a different skill set. But anyway, back then, being a photographer was being able to anticipate what a good picture was, having an eye for that.
Mm-hmm.
Nowadays, I think being a photographer is taking as many photos as you can and trying to use a computer and other aids to make them look as good. Has being a photographer changed over years, or is it still is a good photographer 40 years ago? I'm an old guy, the same as it is now.
I feel like definitely with film photography, that's a whole different skill set that I am like nowhere near like good at. Um, but definitely it has changed because back then you used to not know what your photos were going to turn out like. You just had to know the settings. Like I can take a test photo and be like, oh, I need to adjust my ISO to make it darker, make my shutter speed, bump it up. Like, but now, like back then, like, oh my goodness, I would have been screwed, like it would not have worked. But I definitely still think the art of being able to capture a good photo still stands. Like not everyone, you can be shooting the same thing, but not everybody's going to take the exact same photo that you will be doing. Like it's more than just pressing a button, but it's also just knowing the art of it and the angles and just experimenting.
Yeah. It's funny because I started um, sports photography when my son, who's laying on the couch back there, started playing soccer, and I would take photos just to stop me from yelling at him and the referees. So it was a way to kind of occupy my time. But I learned over time to anticipate photos like after a goal where folks put their cameras down and
Mm-hmm.
celebrate. I learned the moments to get like the best photos. And those are things I think, again, I don't think I'm a great photographer, but I do think I can anticipate moments that others may not be able to anticipate.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, do the photographers of my day with the dark rooms and the film, do they still exist? Is there still a market for people that take photos that way?
Um, it definitely depends. I think certain marketing points, like I know the Mystics, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, they released some new gear, some new merch, and they had like a little small photo shoot that was used with film and it looked super good because the disposable cameras are really trendy right now. But like when I went to that one NBA game, like and I went to the media room, there were no like film photographers in there. It was all like everything was digital pretty much.
Yeah. So, well, do you enjoy the production part of the job? I mean, obviously, so you go out, you go to Navy, to lacrosse, and you Prince William County, go to all the games, and I'm sure you'll be doing the James Madison University games next year. Do you enjoy the production part of the job as well? Trying to make a good photo out of what you were able to capture during competition.
I definitely do. It's really fun, especially with like the different editing software, because like I've always made it a point. This year, one of my goals was just to experiment because a lot of my old sports photos were just like kind of natural editing. But really being able to personalize a photo, make it yours has been super fun. And I enjoy just like sitting and editing and feeling really proud of my work afterwards.
Yeah. Do you you were as a gymnast and dancers go through this. They're trying to seek perfection for their the person that's teaching them, whether it be I don't know what they call it, dance master, but whatever, coach or whatever. Do you find the same pursuit of perfection in photography that you had in gymnastics?
Yeah, I think a lot of photographers definitely do. Because even with the one guy, his name's Stephen Goslin, he's an amazing person and definitely helped me get to where I am today in photography. Like I asked him the same thing, and he's like, I will always be the worst critic of my own images, but then other people will see them and be like, oh, like that's good, but there's always going to be something that I can work towards and do better. But yeah, so definitely still exists, but I am able to sit back every once in a while and be proud of what I've done.
Exactly. Well, can you be a successful photographer and not be good at social media? Like one thing that you do very well is you're very present on social media. You're easy to find, and you also know how to present. You know which channels to put your photos. How important is social media as part of the job of a photographer?
I think personally it's extremely important. Just having your work out there can allow it to reach like thousands of people. And if you just land the right person, it can change your life. Um, I don't know if like LinkedIn is really considered like social media,
It
but
is. Yeah, I think so.
yeah, I owe a lot of like my big professional sports gigs through LinkedIn because that's how I got to know Steven. And so basically, it was last summer I reached out to him and I was like, hey, I see that you're the team photographer for the Wizards and the Mystics, and I would like to Zoom interview with you just to ask you about your career and how you got to where you are today, if you don't mind. And so we built that relationship. And then he invited me back out and continued to do so. Um, and I feel like maintaining that level of professionalism over social media, to which I believe was taught from gymnastics, is extremely important, because it's not just having social media, it's knowing how to use it well in a professional manner that's able to seek you good opportunities in the future. Because if you just post and maybe use some like bad grammar, I don't know. Personally, like I'm very picky with what I put out online, because I know that's always going to be a reflection of who I am as a person. And when people scroll through your profile, you want them to have the best impression of you.
The fact that you're willing to ask for what you want, that's the reason why we're talking today, is because you actually asked me. Not many students have asked me to be interviewed, especially women, girls are very, I don't want to say reluctant, but guys love talking about themselves. And there's very few guys that I ask to talk to that will say no. Most female, even if I ask them to interview them, they don't like talking about themselves to that extent. The fact that you asked me, I was very impressed. I'm like, well, she must have a story to tell, so I got to talk to her.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, yeah. So, so when you think about the future, where do you think photography? What kind of role does it have in your future? Would you like to do this for a living? Do you always see it being part of your life? Or is it going to be a strong hobby, maybe a part-time gig, or is this the way you want to make your living?
Definitely that's the goal. I always tell people I want to be a photographer for the NBA one day, no matter where I am. I just think that would be super cool. I mean, I get to travel the world, hang out with like professional athletes. Like it's super cool, and also do something that I love. Because if you get your name out there enough, like you can make some good money. People think photographers like, I mean, it's just like you're going to be broke for the rest of your life. But I also know it's something that's going to fulfill me for as long as I live. And I'm also going to be studying like not photography in college, like I'll do it as a hobby, but I'm studying like journalism and sports communication. So I feel like I definitely, if it's not a photographer, I'd like to maybe do PR or like journalism, like sports broadcasting even. But I really like the NBA, or WNBA. I just like basketball. It's just really entertaining for me. And I just feel like the association is just represented really well. And they do a good job at what they do.
Yeah. And when you say you want to be in media, would you want to be in print media, or would you want to actually be a journalist and write articles or cover events, or would you want to podcast? You'd be great, or be on TV and commentate on sports.
Honestly, wherever life really takes me, I need to really dabble in college. I feel like with the different fields of journalism, I feel like I'd always like a podcast would have been super cool, or maybe being like a game day host or broadcasting. Like if I could be a sports broadcaster for like gymnastics or ESPN, like that could be really cool. Um, but I honestly have a good feeling about photography. Like I feel like I've definitely made the connections needed to be able to do like to achieve that goal of mine. But like, I mean, I'm never really set on one aspect of my life, just because I know how fast like life can change, but I'm open to all opportunities.
Yeah. Well, that's great. And I'm sure you're going to be wildly successful. In terms of different sports, are certain sports harder to cover than others? My guess is, indoor or under lights could be a little bit more complicated because of the settings on the camera. But do you find that you're better at different sports than others?
100%. I feel like basketball, although it's like indoor and the lighting can be kind of tricky because some gyms have like really yellow lighting. Like even my own gym at school, like I will say it's just like the yellow lighting makes it hard to edit out. But there's also a lot more emotion that's involved with that, as well as lacrosse. I love shooting lacrosse. That's, I mean, how I got started really, because the natural light helps a lot, and there's not as many players out on the field, so it's easier for me to move around and like focus on certain players if I need to. But like football, I mean, being shorter, because I'm 5'2", like it's hard like trying to get the certain shots, that I can get when there's so many people out on the field as well. And then baseball, like I'm just not the biggest fan of baseball personally. Like, and there's not that much action going on. Like, I've really got to be like focused like the whole time. Not saying that I don't need to with other sports, but there's always something going on with lacrosse and basketball. But baseball, it's like if I turn away for 1 second, like there could be a shot that I'll miss, and I just get so frustrated. So definitely, I feel like different sports can have their skill sets, but I've never been not open to trying to shoot another sport.
And do you find yourself playing favorites? So with me, as you know, I post on Nova Soccer Source and Nova Hoop Legends and some Facebook groups as well. And if a player thanks me or says something to me, I will make sure the next time I'm wherever that player is to take more photos, just because they were polite enough to acknowledge the work. So I appreciate that. Other people, they may text me and say, "Hey, where's my photos?" Like I was supposed to do it. Do you find yourself playing favorites and taking photos of folks that are particularly polite to you?
100%, because that token of appreciation means more to me than like a lot of people know, or like a simple repost. Because at the end of the day, like whether or not that gains me anything, it still helps get my name out there. And like especially like some of the football players, like they think they're entitled to my time, and it's like absurd. I'm like, guys, like I also have a life. Like this isn't my only job. Like because in the fall, because I also work with kids at Lifetime Fitness.
Oh, great.
So that's like my main job. And then I had Inside Nova, and then they still wanted me to come out to their other games. And I'm like, I could only juggle so much. But when people did come out and like truly thank me, it did make me have some bias towards them and want to give back to them more, because just by saying thank you, it's like, oh, like I feel appreciated, rather than just like something that they could use just to look good on social media. You know what I mean? They forget I'm still like a person sometimes.
Okay. Coach Sherman is always very thankful for everything. Every time I
Yes.
interview him, every time I post something, he's always it's a little thing, but it's just amazing how many people don't know those little things. And I'm just like, it's funny.
Right.
And as you know, I do a lot of social media, and I deal with this every day. People that aren't very thankful, and I can't help but notice.
Hmm.
I definitely remember. And it's not that I'm not going to take a big picture of someone that's talented, but I remember folks that are thankful. I really do, and I'm always make sure I dedicate more time than I probably should to those people that are thankful.
Yeah, for sure. Coach Rivers has always been from the get-go, like no matter how bad my photos must have been before I started, he's always been reposting me, supporting me, and I have always appreciated that so much. That's why I want to continue to come out to like more basketball games. Like even maybe when I come back from winter break from JMU, like I'll always remember that and want to give back to him. And not only just him, but especially like with Dr. Bishop and Mr. Paul, is just they're the ones who allowed me to take all the photos this year and allow me to expand my business. So I'm never really going to forget that or think that I'm like too big to ever work with them again.
Yeah. Well, I know you're being professional, but were you sad when Patriot lost in the state final this winter?
Um, a little sad. I mean, I shot for Hayfield like one other time, and like I don't know. For me, it was like whoever won. I still supported both teams because they're also really appreciative, and the players were super nice. So it's like I knew that they worked really hard, but I mean, at the end of the day, we were there, and this might sound like selfish, but I was so happy I got to shoot it. Like it was still super cool, like being out on the floor of the college stadium basketball game. And I mean, I was definitely a little sad because it's just like a little stepping stone, knowing that the end of my senior year is coming up. But I was still very proud of how far they did come and had that comeback after last year.
Yeah. Well, that's great. So Sydney, what are some of your other goals that you have in life other than photography? I know you're interested maybe in journalism and other types of sports related type advocations. What are some of your other things you like to accomplish in your life?
Well, recently I've been selected to be a Morgan's Message member at large. I don't know if you've heard about Morgan's Message, but basically it's just a group where we have like bi-monthly meetings and you talk about mental health and student athletes. And with my previous struggles with that, it's something that I'm extremely passionate about and want to bring up in conversation because I do believe it's not even just in women's sports, but in men's sports too. Like mental health is such like a topic that's not really talked about because you have to be tough to be an athlete, but people forget that there's a fine line between like abusive tactics as well as just like wanting to what's best for your athletes as well. And I'm excited to be able to share my story as a former student athlete to other athletes who may be struggling with the same thing, to know that like if you do quit, like no matter how good you are, there's always going to be something out there for you. Like worrying about the future and not and the way that you appear towards others and your self-worth shouldn't be a factor when wanting to quit a sport based off of like whether or not it's affecting you poorly mentally, especially. And I think now that I've finally overcome that step, and I can say that confidently now because I did therapy for about a year last year because that was a big thing that I struggled with, and I'm happy to share it with people. But knowing that I could help other people who may be feeling the same way, which a lot of people usually do, that will mean a lot to me. And I'm excited to be a part of that.
That sounds fantastic. Sounds like you're well positioned to help others as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, my daughter Lily, again, she's going to be at Madison. Hopefully, we get to meet you in person really
Yeah.
soon. I shared Instagram information with her. I'll give you hers as well. So if you guys can be in touch. But look,
Awesome.
Sydney, you're wonderful. What you do. So glad get to see your work this year and to get to know you a little bit. And really glad that you suggested this. And I mean, you did an amazing job as always. But yeah, this has been great. I'm glad we got a chance to talk. And I just wish you the best of luck at JMU. And we're definitely going to miss you during basketball season next year.
Yes. Yeah. Well, thank you too. I really appreciate you having me and giving me the time to be able to share things that I have to say. But yeah, I'll definitely be missing you guys too. But I'm really excited to start kind of a new life at college, see where that takes me. But yeah, thank you again for giving me the time of day to have me on here.
No, obviously you deserve it. And best of luck with your work with athletes that have been who have psychological struggles or however you want to put it. That's very important work, and it's very timely, and it's everywhere. And I'm glad it's being addressed. So
yeah,
anyway,
definitely.
Yeah. Well, Cindy, look, this has been great. Very, very happy to meet you. And hopefully we can keep in touch.
Thank you. You too. Yeah, for sure. I'll see you soon.
Okay. Sounds great, Sydney. Have a good day now.
All right. Thank you. You too. Bye-bye.
All right. You're welcome.